to joining Unity Fellowship. And I also feel like many churches focus on the individual, but we are actually meant to be in relationship with others. The concept of Ubuntu, that if one person is oppressed, that all people are oppressed. And I feel like Pastor Bob, in his sermons, he really focuses on systemic injustices and oppression, and that God is on the side of the oppressed.
Well, after many years of being out of the church, we came to a point where we were ready to find a church, but I in particular knew that I no longer wanted a part of what I had experienced as a younger person. My soul and spirit had just no longer aligned with what I was being taught about myself. So I left the church for many years, and then as a couple years later, we decided we wanted to return to a church. So I knew part of that had to be a church that was totally accepting and that not just welcome to come to the door, but could fully participate in all regard, should we desire. And so we began to visit churches, and we visited Unity Fellowship a while back, and felt like we had made a discovery in a church home.
And we also like this church because it's a teaching church. Every Sunday we have the opportunity after the service, or even sometimes during it, if we have questions and we're not sure of what he's talking about, or if we have questions as to the sermon that he's preaching, that we're allowed to do that. And it's something that I've never had in a church. It's been very enlightening, and I've learned a lot about myself, and I've learned about a lot about a lot of things, actually. And above and beyond anything else, I know that I'm loved. I know that Scott's loved, and I know that we're loved together.
And so it's not just like going to mass at a big church and you just go in, hear the thing, get up and leave. Here you actually are charged with asking yourself, what does it mean? And the membership is small enough we can all interact during the sermon as well as after the sermon. So we can ask each other questions. You learn from other people with their comments or their questions about whatever we're discussing that week, or what was discussed the week before, or whatever. And unlike a large church where you just know the people from sight, you actually know the people here. Whether they are active in doing something or they're just here every week and they participate in how are you doing and stuff like that. Or they tell you how somebody else that they've talked to that you haven't seen is doing. So it's like a very large, it's not just a church family, it's a large family.
Just because you came from a Baptist background or a Pentecostal background or a Catholic background doesn't mean you're not welcome. Unity will surprises a lot of people because everyone is accepted. You will feel comfortable. You won't feel out of place. You won't feel judged. You'll feel like you belong.
Got a long haul to go still. folks. This is Pastor Bob coming to you from Unity Fellowship. You may be really sick of church. You may have given up on church a long time ago, and maybe you're not even looking for a place. But I want to invite you to a faith community where you'll be safe, where you can be accepted for who you are, always, for whoever you are right now on your faith journey. Check us out on Facebook Live. Check us out on Zoom. I think you'll find a place that you're safe, a place that you'll be accepted, a place that you'll feel comfortable.
What makes Unity Fellowship different from other churches in Owensboro is their focus on making sure that everyone feels welcomed and accepted with no conditions. They're accepting of the LGBTQ plus community, of different people from different backgrounds and cultures, and this is what really led me to joining Unity Fellowship. This community, at its heart, is open to everyone, and even if you are on the fence and you might disagree, we are still open to having that dialogue and that discussion that fosters growth and understanding. So I feel like the people who come to Unity Fellowship are so open and loving that even if you didn't agree with something that the church promotes, that you're still able to express that and not be judged.
She didn't notice. I know. You know I'm joking.
Good morning. My name is Gator Lone Wolf, and I'm the Associate Pastor at Unity Fellowship. And I want to begin by saying Happy Pride Month to everyone. You are in a safe, welcoming place. No condemnation, no judgment. We affirm every part of you, your friends, and your loved ones. Again, welcome. We're glad you're with us today. Let me introduce our Senior Pastor, Bob Coons, as he offers a welcome as well.
Thank you, Pastor G, and I want to ditto everything that he said. You are very, very welcome in this space. Every molecule of your being is welcomed and affirmed, and we're so glad that you have found us, whether you're joining us in person, on site, or you're joining us virtually on Facebook or on Zoom. However you've found us, we're so glad that you have, and hope that you'll come back and be with us every opportunity that's available to you. Want to begin with our first video this morning. This is Cloverton, and the title is Wineskins. share any news, joys, or concerns that you might have. If you are on site, if you'll wave a hand and we'll get a microphone to you so that everybody in all the platforms can hear you. If you are on Facebook, if you put something in chat, somebody will read it. And if you're on Zoom, you can unmute. We can hear you. Let's share any news, joys, and concerns that you have. Let me begin with a joy. We have a signed purchase agreement for the church building. It has sold. We will close on that sale on June the 20th. As most of you know, the purchaser is the Burmese congregation, Chin Emmanuel Baptist Church, that has been meeting here already for the last 5 years. We've been sharing space with them. We're just kind of flip-flop on who owns the building is about all that's going on. Nothing much changes as a result of the sale, except that they are the new owners and responsible for all the upkeep. That frees us up a lot. We are financing it for them, which means that we'll also have income coming in from them for the purchase price, as well as the down payment that they'll be making. So things are really, really good. We're going to have a huge celebration. They're as excited as we are, and we're going to have a huge celebration on August the 4th. Go ahead and write that down in your calendar. August the 4th, big celebration, probably be in the afternoon. After our morning worship service, we'll have a celebration. I'm guessing we may start in here and then move to the fellowship hall for a joint meal together. But we want to celebrate this. Everybody on all sides believes that this was a God thing, and it was kind of mind-blowing to experience the whole process of that happening. So huge joy. Let's celebrate together.
I got a. This is Jacob. I got a joy. I got 79 days left in my program, and everything's still going good. And God's been helping me with my temptations. And whenever I'm struggling, I give my struggles to God, and He's really been helping me out and taking the burden off my back for me. And today's my birthday, so.
We rejoice with you on both counts, and happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a joy. We signed our closing papers Friday for our second house, so that's one burden off of us. We got the money, went to the bank, deposited it, and now we only have $1,000 left. So we're almost debt free because of it. But that's an awesome joy.
That's great.
Less money going out every month.
That makes a difference, doesn't it? There's a couple of different ways that you can balance the books, right?
Yes.
You can have more money coming in or less money going out.
Right.
Either one helps. Yeah, and we'll be doing both here in church.
And then the next 2 Sundays, we won't be here. We'll be in Texas. We'll be traveling to Texas and be in Texas to see my dad. So just keep us in prayers for travels, and it's going to be hot because it's supposed to. The day we get there, it's supposed to be 101. So it's going to be a major temperature shift for us.
Please don't bring it back with you. Just leave that heat down there in Texas, okay? Anyone else?
I got a couple concerns today. I had a text this morning from my niece. My aunt, my last aunt on my mom's side, it's her last sister, and her sister just died about 4 months ago. And she was saying that she's the oldest one left, and they said this morning that she's really not doing good at all. And I didn't think she would after her sister died because they were so close. Anyway, they wanted to put her in hospice, and the kids there's 2 daughters, and they're arguing over that. Her name is Hazel Wilson, and anyway, remember her. She's 92 years old, so
Wow.
she's not a young chicken. And also, Gail's family, they're going through dementia right now. And her sister, Faye, has been in a nursing home with it for about 5 years. And they said there's 7 stages of dementia, and I think she has stage 8. And they said the other day she has also developed shingles to go with all of her other problems. So she didn't really need that to go along with it. So remember her also. Her and her brother Jerry also. He's not bad, but he has it also. So those are the 2 concerns we had.
Okay, thank you, Roy. Anyone else?
Yeah, Bob, I've got another prayer concern. One of my schoolmates, one of the guys I went to school with, his father passed away last night. Don was a Sunday school teacher, a choir member. He loved playing the piano and loved sports, and was a big influence on a lot of kids in church. And he passed last night, and so that community and that family has a big hole now. And just be prayed for the Don Bingham family.
Certainly, certainly.
Bob, I'll be traveling this week, so just prayers for safe travels.
Yeah, thank you. Anything on Facebook this morning? I can't get to Facebook.
Nope.
Okay, all right. Another joy, and then I've got some news for you as well. Debbie continues to do well. They had originally said her discharge date was going to be June the 5th, which would be Wednesday. But she's doing so well that they think another 3 days of intense therapy would really do her some good. So they're going to keep her through the end of the week and come home on Saturday, the 8th. She makes progress almost hourly. She'll move her pinky, and then she can move her thumb, and then she can move the first finger, and then the middle fingers, and now she's starting to have a little grip, and the wrist. I mean, just constant improvements in her abilities. So thank you. She wanted me to make sure that I said thank you to all of you for your phone calls, for your cards, for your prayers, for some sent flowers, all the ways that you have shown your concern for her. A giant thank you from both of us as she recovers from this stroke. And then within a few days, we'll be going back to the oncologist to see where do we go now with the treatments on her cancer as well. So she's got a long road ahead of her on both counts, but thank you for your prayers and support up to this point. And on the news front, Sunday, June the 23rd, 3 weeks from today, is Pride Sunday. We have a special treat planned for our service that day. Not only are we hosting Pride here on this site, but we'll have a Pride worship service that morning. And the special treat is that Gator and his partner, Dominique, will be leading us in a conversation about marriage equality and beyond. Many of you know that they were a part of the lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court. They were one of the plaintiffs on that Supreme Court decision. So they can tell us a little bit about their own personal journey, as well as leading us into a discussion about where are we now. It's kind of iffy now whether or not that's going to remain a law of the land. So some real good conversation. They want it to be more of a dialogue. They'll tell part of their story, but they want it to be a dialogue as well. So I'm looking forward to that. Plan on being here to worship with us that day, as well as staying for the celebration as the Pride Picnic is that afternoon. Anyone else? let's pray together. Pastor G, would you lead us in prayer?
Sure. Oh, Creator, thank you for this time to come together as a family of faith. We ask that you be with those who raised prayer concerns this morning for all the different things that are happening, some understood, some not understood. We ask that you be with those still going through disease, sickness, health concerns. Walk with them. Be with those struggling in addiction. And then on the same hand, we give you thanks for all the great things that are happening in our lives, many times simultaneously. And sometimes we focus too much on the negative, but remind us that there is always good happening if we can just find it. We give you thanks for all those great things, houses being closed on, birthdays, overcoming addiction and maintaining sobriety, and for healing. Focus our hearts and minds on this message this morning and remind us how much we are loved, period, not for what we do, for who we are, but just because we are God's. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Let's say our affirmation of togetherness. We gather in oneness together. We praise and worship God together. We proclaim God together. We welcome and affirm all persons in God's love together. We seek to live for God with every breath and heartbeat together. If you would like to be on our contact list, and I invite you to do so, please text the word ADD, A-D-D, to 270-201-5022. You'll get a form back, a digital form, which you can fill out with all the information that you want to share. I would ask you to at least give us your name. Just texting the word add will add you to the contact list, but we'd like to know who's on the list. So give us your name, and every Sunday morning you'll receive a text with the topic for the day, as well as some links that you can join us. And occasionally, for a special occasion or something, you might receive a text then. We won't wear you out with it, but we'd love to have you on our contact list. If you'd like to support this ministry, there are a number of different ways that you can do that. You can click on the Donate Now button, which is on our Facebook page or on our web page. You can mail it to P.O. Box 1401 in Owensboro, Kentucky, 42302. If you happen to be on site, there's an offering plate at each of the doors as you leave. You can just drop it in there. Working on some other ways that you can give, but for now, those are the ways that you can support this ministry. We appreciate every gift, and very special to us, no matter how small or large. You help support the ongoing ministry of this church. Our next video is Scott Coates. If you're on Facebook, you probably won't see it, and you can just follow the link that is in the chat section. The rest of us, let's watch Scott Coates with Wineskins together. Our Church Without Walls series concludes today. We've been looking at a variety of parables and encounters with Jesus that help us to kind of start the conversation about how we lean into the changes that are required. We're living in a very different kind of world, and specifically trying to think about what it means in a digital age to embrace the change and adapt to the change that is in front of us. Today we're going to be looking at a passage of Scripture about wineskins that don't last forever. They have to be changed. Jesus, when confronted with the structures that were rigid and unwilling to bend or change, told this parable. All three of the synoptic gospels include this parable about the wineskins, because Jesus, when Jesus came on the scene, the new wine that Jesus was offering, the new way of thinking and understanding and being in the world, didn't fit well within the structures that were already there. And so all three of these gospel writers put it in a place where Jesus has a confrontation with the traditions and the culture that he was facing, and then Jesus gave this parable about wineskins and patches, which we'll read here in just a minute. So we're going to use this as a kind of a jumping off place and as a conclusion to the whole series that we've looked at, to think together about how we create new structures and new wineskins for the new wine of this age. Pastor G has our reading from Mark chapter 2.
John's disciples and the Pharisees had a habit of fasting. Some people asked Jesus, "Why do John's disciples and the Pharisees' disciples fast, but yours don't?" Jesus said, "The wedding guests can't fast while the groom is with them, can they? As long as they have the groom with them, they can't fast. But the days will come when the groom will be taken away from them, and then they will fast. No one sews a piece of new unshrunk cloth on old clothes. Otherwise, the patch tears away from it, the new from the old, and makes a worse tear. No one pours new wine into old leather wineskins. Otherwise, the wine would burst the wineskins, and the wine would be lost, and the wineskins destroyed. But new wine is for new wineskins."
So let's think together about this parable that Jesus offers. And let me put it in another context. Phyllis Tickle has made the observation that about every 300 to 500 years, the church has a giant rummage sale, she calls it, where we have to go through all of the traditions and cultural things that we've adopted, and figure out which ones of those are worth saving, which ones are not, and so we jettison a lot of the baggage that's collected. We all know that in our own personal lives, if you live in the same place for a long time, you tend to gather up a lot of stuff, right? And every once in a while, you got to go through and get rid of some of the stuff. Well, the church has the same kind of baggage, not only physically, but we have all these traditions and things that come a part of the church. And we begin to forget which is the important part and which is the baggage that goes along with us. And so we're going to think about that. We've looked at the story of Nicodemus, who comes to Jesus in the dark because he doesn't want to be outed. And so we think about those folks who come to us and maybe never really enter into these walls inside this sanctuary, but they lurk in the digital land, and how do we reach out to them? How do we let them know that we care about them? We looked at the story of the woman of the well, where Jesus actually goes to her. She's also trying to avoid crowds and avoid people, but Jesus seeks her out and accepts her for who she is. How do we reach out to those who don't understand, don't know that they are accepted for who they are, that every part of their being is accepted? We looked at the story of Lazarus and the rich man who was camped just outside the rich man's door, but the rich man stepped over him day by day by day and never really did see Lazarus. So how do we see those people who are lurking, maybe just outside our door, but we don't see them sometimes? How do we develop the sight and understanding to see them for who they are? And then last week we looked at the story or the parable rather of the sower who goes out and casts the seeds just everywhere, sowing seeds of love generously. How do we continue to sow those seeds as a church, as a community of faith? How do we sow them as generously and as far and as wide as we possibly can? So to get us started, I want to have our breakout question first. What are some of the kinds of things that have become obsolete in our own lives? What kinds of things have served their purpose but are no longer useful? And it could be anything. I'm not just talking about church necessarily. We'll get there. But what are some things that have become obsolete in our world?
Well, today I'm sitting in a church that 65 years ago I was sitting beside my grandmother in the third pew from the front. I was either wearing a dress or a skirt and a shirt and a top. And I definitely wouldn't be wearing a sleeveless top because that was the way you honored God.
Yeah.
Today I sit here in slacks and a sleeveless top. Am I dishonoring God?
Yeah. Thank you.
Obsolete telephone books.
Telephone books? What's that? Someone else. Something that's obsolete in our world now.
VCR.
Yeah. Again, what? VCR. Anybody remember those?
Reel-to-reel tape player.
Reel-to-reel tape player.
Yeah, we used to have one here at Buggy Factory.
Yeah. Buggy Factory.
Buggy factory. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, not a lot of call for buggy anymore. Except for when you want to have a little nostalgia, maybe. And you pay out the nose to have a buggy ride.
Home phones in most cases.
Yeah. We carry them with us now. We don't have them hanging on the wall or on a desktop anymore, do we? Or very much.
Gas lights on the street.
Okay.
And what are those lamps with oil, coal oil lamps?
Right. How about a hitching post? Did you know that in Owensboro there's still a law in the books that says you have to have a hitching post every so many feet? It's one of those laws that they never took off the books. It's still there.
In Portland, Oregon, they have like a screw eye embedded in the concrete on the curbs in a lot of places, and those were to tie your horses to.
Okay, all right. No hitching post for them, just the minimalist.
Bob, since you brought up old laws, in Texas, there is still a law on the books. It's against the law to have a pair of wire pliers in your back pocket.
Okay.
Because of cattle rustling and cutting fences.
Yeah, I was starting to wonder in my mind what was the reason for that. Okay, that makes sense. they were assumed you were guilty of being a rustler if you had a pair of pliers, right? I guess. Anyone else? Anybody on Facebook or Zoom?
Tracy said handwritten letters.
Okay. Let's try just one of you talking. Handwritten letters. Okay. Both of you were talking. I didn't catch that. Thank you for reading it. Yeah, handwritten letters. Absolutely. Or letters, period.
Well, cursive writing.
Cursive writing, correct.
DVD.
All right, thank you. Walking to school. Quite a bit has changed, hasn't it? Our world is rather radically different from the world that we grew up in. So let me take the next question. What are some things that are different from the early church? And how do we do things differently than the early church did? What's different from the way when Christianity first became a thing in the first century after Jesus, and the church became an organized thing? How do we do things a little differently than they did?
Women get to go to church.
Women get to go to church. I'm not sure that was not the case in the early church, actually. We kind of regressed after the beginning of the early church.
Was that when all of the people put together everything they had?
Yes, yeah. They shared everything in common. We're actually going to look at that passage next week as we begin a new series on the book of Acts and talking about the early church. Where did they meet?
Houses.
In houses, or if it was unsafe to meet in houses, in the catacombs?
Everybody went to church to learn from the priest, because the priests or pastors were the teachers.
So had been disciples of Jesus, and then there were those who learned from them, and they became the teachers. They oftentimes followed the same tradition that they had in the synagogue, which is that the teacher would sit and everybody else would stand. I think we're going to try that today. No? Okay. All right. Pushed it too much there, didn't I? Did they have joy? I think so. I think, and when we do the series on Acts, I think we'll see that there was a lot of joy. But there were it was really messy as the church was emerging. It was really messy, and I think we'll find some of that messiness of becoming. We think sometimes church is messy nowadays. It was pretty messy back then too. Yeah, there was a clash of cultures as they were moving out of just a Jewish culture and embracing a Gentile culture alongside. There was a lot of clashing of those cultures and ways of thinking. I'm sorry? Never change? Yeah, we don't like to change, do we? And in fact, that's kind of what we're talking about a little bit today. Well, all three of the synoptic gospels talk about or tell us this parable that we're looking at today, the parable of the wineskins. Change is hard. Change is uncomfortable, but change is absolutely necessary. If you look at the life of Jesus, one thing that was constant with Jesus is that he was advocating for change. He was rubbing up against the customs. He was rubbing up against the methodologies of the day, the way that people interpreted the scriptures, the way that they think and understand, the structures that were already in place. Jesus kind of rubbed up against the structures that were in place, the paradigms and the systems. Everything about his ministry screamed change. Now, a lot of people have read this passage about the wineskins, the new wine, and the wineskins. Oh, by the way, let me make a clarification before I go there. What is new wine? You know?
Juice.
It's grape juice. It's just been pressed and created juice, and you put it in a wineskin, you put it in a new wineskin, and what happens?
Let it ferment.
It ferments. It becomes
wine,
alcohol, right? Okay. And so as it ferments, it expands. And the wineskin, because it's a new wineskin, will stretch. But if you try to reuse that wineskin, when you pour the new grape juice in, as it starts to ferment and expand, well, the old wineskin had already expanded as far as it could go, and so what happens is it bursts and you lose the new wine. It is actual wine. It was alcoholic. This is not to say that some people struggle with alcohol. In that culture, that was not as much of a deal. People did not struggle quite as much with alcohol. The alcoholic content was not as great in some cases, in most cases. But it was actual wine. You cannot go to the scriptures and make a case for it wasn't really wine, it was just grape juice. That's just not accurate. Jesus drank wine. Jesus was called, and his disciples were considered wine bibbers, because they partied and drank wine together with the wrong kind of folks. That was the main reason that they gave them that title. But it was actual wine. So the caution I want to give is that some people have interpreted this passage as that the new wine that Jesus came to offer was Christianity, and it was replacing Judaism. That too is inaccurate. That's not the case. The wine that Jesus was offering was not a new religion. Jesus was a Jew. He was not offering a new religion called Christianity. He was offering a new way of doing Judaism. A lot of damage has been done by those who claim that what Jesus came to offer was a whole new religion, and it had done away with Judaism and Jews. It has led to a lot of anti-Semitism, but that's just not accurate at all. Jesus was a Jew. He was offering a new way of doing Judaism, but this new wine, this new way of doing what Jesus was offering, could not be retrofitted into the old wineskins that were had stretched as far as they could stretch, the old wineskins of the baggage of Judaism. So Jesus was doing what Phyllis Tickle was talking about. Jesus was offering a time of a rummage sale. Some of these wineskins need to be gotten rid of. It's just baggage. It's not ready to receive the new wine that Jesus was offering. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus was challenging his listeners to bend the sacred texts that they had from Judaism, the interpretations that we had traditionally held, and lean toward interpretations and ways of understanding God in the world that lead to love, that lead to justice, that lead to equity and inclusion and compassion, that lead to life. The new skins and new wine was not the only metaphor that the gospel writers used. They also use the metaphor of a path, that not everybody wants to take that path. There's a lot of resistance to change, a lot of resistance to getting rid of the old familiar wineskins, and so not everybody wants to go down that path and choose to travel that pathway. Another world is possible if we collectively choose it. C.S. Lewis said it this way: "It may be hard for an egg to turn into a bird. It will be a jolly sight harder for it to learn to fly while remaining an egg. We're like eggs at present, and you cannot go on indefinitely being just an ordinary, decent egg. We must be hatched or go bad." So, as we apply this parable of the wineskins, three things I want to say to kind of get us going, and then we'll open it up for some more discussion. We need to break free, first of all, from the fear of change. Change is absolutely inevitable. It's going to happen. Change is necessary. Change is perhaps the only thing that is constant. You know, one thing's going to happen. Things are going to change, right? Always. Nothing has remained without change. Whether it's the way we live, whether it's our family, everything is in a constant state of change. And the best way to handle that is to go with it, right? As change happens, we adapt. We find a way to fit into that new change. Churches are real bad about wanting to try to maintain right where we are and never embrace the change that is coming down the path. As we're going through those changes, the second thing is we've got to be willing to defy tradition. Tradition is the one thing that kind of holds us back and keeps us from embracing the changes that need to be made. We've always done it that way, right? Or we've never done it that way. One of those two statements is what typically happens in church when a change is offered or a change is necessary. Somebody will speak up and say, "But we've never done it that way." And so you've got to buck up against those traditions. Jesus was constantly doing that. It was one of the reasons that he got into so much trouble and they eventually put him to death, was because he was the epitome of change and bucking tradition. So the last thing that I want to say about that is being willing to break free from the fear of change, willing to defy tradition, but as we're doing that, we don't just embrace change for the sake of change. It's not just any old thing, just change it up for the sake of changing things. We want to follow the Spirit in revealing those new strategies. What is the Spirit? How is the Spirit of God leading us? How is God leading us to do the next thing that we do? When we came to the decision that we were going to have to sell our building, I was totally prepared to not have a building at all and to go completely online with our services, completely online and developing an online community, and I was 100% ready to do that, to move away from having any kind of physical building, or maybe not, certainly not a building this size, maybe a little studio somewhere where we would broadcast from. But I guess the Spirit had other ideas. We all made ourselves available to God's leading. Who would have ever guessed that the Spirit would say, no, I'm not quite finished with you in that building yet. I want you to stay right here where you are and keep doing some of the things that you're doing. Last week, we had somebody online with us, Jeffrey. I didn't remember his last name, but Jeffrey was here last week on Facebook, and he was listening to us. And when I mentioned something about the sale of the building, he immediately asked the question, are you still going to be hosting the Pride events? And that was his concern, is that we would not have a physical presence anymore where we could still host Pride in Owensboro. And thank God, the Spirit has opened that door, and we're able to continue to host the Pride events. And God wasn't finished with us in this place. But we didn't know. We were just open to where the Spirit would lead us. So let the Spirit lead us. As I said before, people don't like to change. And when in Luke's gospel, when Luke records the same parable, it ends with a different, or a tagline at the end, where Jesus says, and no one after drinking old wine desires new wine, but says, the old is good. Does that sound like people? We like the old. Give me that old-time religion. Anybody who's ever had old wine or fermented wine doesn't want to doesn't want to go back to the grape juice, Jesus says. People like to hang on to the old religion, the old stuff. Brian McLaren, in his book, Naked Spirituality, made this comment. I have discarded those theological wineskins, but I treasure more than ever the wine of the Spirit that was somehow conveyed to me through them. That suit of theological clothing doesn't fit me anymore, but the naked spirituality that sustains me today originally came dressed in it. So, let's begin to open it up for some conversation. Can you think of some other wineskins that we're ready to jettison? Some old wineskins that probably need to go. Or maybe we don't know for sure that they need to go, that we're willing to let them go. What are some old wineskins? Some we've already let go. Patriarchy. Good wineskin to let go. We can let go of the patriarchy that has not only been a part of our culture at large, but has been maintained very strongly in church, oftentimes.
The old organ music and old music.
Yeah, organ music. Did you know that when organ was first invented, I guess is the word, when an organ instrument was first invented and they tried to use it in church, people called it radical and didn't want the organ in church. It was considered too outlandish, too crazy, too worldly. We don't want that old organ music. And
so they toned down the organs.
Right.
Baptist coming out again. Choirs, organs, pianos, song leaders.
Yep.
Now we have videos. And before that we had keyboards. So even from the choir, it was changed a lot.
Yeah.
The keyboard music to new songs, the songs that we sang after
Right.
that. So
The music's different.
Yeah, the church and the church itself, has changed a lot from where we were back then to where we are now. And if people were, us Baptist ones, if we were unwilling to accept a new way of life, we would still be hunting a Baptist church to go to.
Yeah.
Bob, I think the whole way of worshiping where you have a sermon and you sit quietly and you listen to that for 20, 25 minutes and you get up and leave. I think we've been introducing a new way of engaging and having people be actual parts of the service.
Right.
And I think that's an old wineskin that we need to continue to dismantle
Right.
and engage people better.
Yeah. And I hope that it does. I hope that it is more meaningful to you than just listening to me drone on for 30, 40 minutes. I'm hoping that this interaction, it's enlightening to me. It's helpful to me. I love it. But I hope you do too. Anyone else?
Bob, what about baptism?
All right. Tell me a little bit more what you have in mind, Becky. That is
Well,
Becky,
you don't
right?
see it as much. You don't see it as much.
Okay. All right. I don't know that we've gotten rid of it. If you have someone that's a new believer and desires to be baptized, we've had a couple of baptisms in the last few years.
Yeah.
I think because we're not seeing a lot of new converts, that's probably what you're talking about. But I still think it's a good practice. I'm not ready to jettison baptism per se. It's certainly a practice of the New Testament, and I think it's a meaningful practice. I will say this, however. I grew up in a Baptist church which said there was only one way to do that, which was to dunk people under the water. And I believe that that's probably the way the New Testament church practiced it. But other forms of baptism are just as valid. And I'm not one to say there's only one way to do baptism. Even if that is the way the New Testament church practiced it, I think the other forms of baptism, whether it's pouring or sprinkling, are just as valid. And this church, by the way, accepts anybody's baptism. Carol, did you have something?
Just the one that I think is so obvious, the way we now look at the Bible.
Yeah. How do we interpret it? How do we approach it? We're seeing a new way of thinking about the Bible. We're jettisoning that old way of everything is literal word for word. It was never a good way to interpret the scriptures anyway. It certainly wasn't the way that Jesus interpreted scripture or approached the scriptures. So yeah, I think it's a very important part of that.
One thing that concerns me today about our society in which we live, when I grew up, our parents took us to church. And young people today are not being taken to the church. And so many of our young people have no idea what religion is.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
how are we going to reach those people?
That's a great question and one I don't have a good answer for.
I think it has to be relevant.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Bob. I think it has to be relevant for the people. And I think a lot of parents my age and younger no longer feel the church is relevant. The church with a capital C, not particularly unity.
Right.
And they don't want their children going to a place that's going to separate people by gender and assign them roles and exclude certain people. And they just, or they don't buy into the God's a Santa Claus thing, that God will rescue you out of everything if you don't sin or try to be perfect. There's a lot of that residue, I think, that's built up on generations, and they just think it's not relevant for me anymore. I'm not putting down unity at all, but I'm saying I think that's a real issue. Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, no, thank you. I totally agree with you. It's an actual reality that for a lot of people, they consider the church out of touch with reality, old-fashioned, and not relevant to their lives. So I think the onus is on us, not them. They're not bringing their children to church because they don't think they get what their children need, and they're probably right in the big arena church, that we're teaching the wrong. That's some of the baggage that they don't want their kids to take on, and so they're staying away. So being more relevant and helping them understand that the church doesn't have to be what the church has been is maybe our only hope.
And one of those things involves the way we see God. When I was growing up, I was almost afraid of God.
Yeah. We've made God not approachable, and God is anything but. Anyone else? Other thoughts? Old hymns, old liturgy, old ways of thinking about God and who God is. Creeds that were written in the 3rd century. In some people's mind, if it's old, it's better. It's funny that I made the illustration a few minutes ago about organ music was radical when it first was developed and introduced in church. But it takes the church a really long time to accept something new. But once it's finally adopted, we can hardly pry it back out of their hands. Organ music is one of those issues where, it took a long time before it was acceptable. But once it was acceptable, you couldn't get rid of it again.
Well, Bob, I think there's certain hymns that are the same way.
Yeah.
Originally, they were bar tunes. And so to make it viable and speak to certain people to get them in the doors, they rewrote the words of familiar tunes.
John and Charles Wesley, the Wesley brothers, were great at that. They took bar hymns and put sacred music, sacred words to them, and became very popular because of that. Yeah. Are we addicted to wineskins?
We made idols of it.
Yeah. In almost every way, in our own personal lives, in our churches, we're addicted to these wineskins. They become so much a part of the way we've always done things that we can't separate it from the wine that's contained inside of those wineskins. But old wineskins have to be discarded in order to make room for the new. They need to be replaced with new wineskins that allow the expansion of God's wine, God's Spirit to expand us into new places, take us to new places. This new wine can be, and change, of course, is scary. It's intimidating. It can be threatening. Threatening enough that it got Jesus killed. And so why do we spend so much energy trying to make everything fit into our containers? The gospel is a powerful thing. The gospel is something that wants to expand. The gospel is something that will burst the wineskins. And if the gospel fits into a container, it's not really the gospel. So what's all this foolishness about wineskins? Well, you have to have some kind of container in order to drink wine, don't you? Cheers. The new wine of the Spirit is here. Let us be willing to drink it and let that new wine burst out the wineskins and go into new and different places. So, here we are, wanting to embrace a new way of being and you all have been very good about this. I think the folks who are joining us virtually, whether it's on Zoom or on Facebook, we've got new areas that we're hoping to put in place before too long with this infusion of some capital. I hope we'll have some money to invest. I would like to see us develop an app that people can watch can participate in our worship service on the app. So there are some new things coming down the pike that I hope that we'll be willing to do and try. I will promise you this: not everything we try is going to work. But I ask you this: be willing to give it a try. Amen. Final comments, observations, questions? Anyone? Thank you for your participation, by the way, today. Real good conversation.
Bob, I think you described unity correctly. New wineskin, outside the norm. It's new, and it's taking a long time to be accepted.
Yeah. Right. And I think I think you're absolutely right. I think unity is a prime example of a church that's willing to expand and go into new areas and new places. The danger is always that once you find a new place, you kind of stay right there and don't continue to be open to new movements of God's Spirit. Anyone else? Any questions? Thanks again for your participation today. Real good conversation. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have. We'll begin to look at the early church through the stories of the book of Acts. We'll find that it was pretty messy at times. We'll begin that next Sunday. Thank you. God bless. Have a good afternoon, everyone.